Logic. From Transformers Cyberverse, this is the Spark Armor Shockwave. And I'll be honest, I don't think there was a bad toy for Shockwave out of Cyberverse. Even the gimmick toys tended to be pretty cool, and this is one of the better ones. This was the Legends or Core Class Scale Shockwave, who of course was given a little friend, but we'll talk about him in a minute. As you can see, I have him right now in just his Spider Tank mode, and I know that when this was first showed off, people didn't like the Spider Tank. I still think it works for Shockwave. I'm very much of the opinion that Shockwave views alternate modes as being a waste of time, and all he wants is to be able to transform, shoot something better, and then get straight back to robot mode. I think that this works for him. It's a good evolution from the idea of him turning into the space gun or the tank. And there is articulation here. You have the universal here in the shoulder, an upper leg cut, now I guess, leg cut, and a knee joint over here. You have a ball joint at the hip and an upper leg cut and knees. You can also move the gun around. I also like how the front of the Spider Tank actually does kind of look like a face. I don't know why, it's just a little thing that I think makes the entire guy feel a little bit more special. We just looked at Scrap Metal recently, and I have to say, I see a lot of similarities between this guy and Scrap Metal, to the point where I'm kind of surprised they never even did a Scrap Metal homage. Then again, Cyberverse didn't exactly have the longest-lived toy lines, now did it? Alright, you ready? We're doing an on-screen transformation, so we're going to take the gun off, and then we're just going to flip this up, and then Shockwave's just kind of roll up, get the back up, bring down the arms. It is kind of nice that you don't have to do anything about the gun hose, and it will kind of just naturally let you get the gun where it needs to go. Flip around the legs, and boom, we have robot mode Shockwave, and he's a pretty solid little guy. A thing I've always loved about Cyberverse Shockwave is the fact that they've always given him such an angry look. There's something about lowering that brow just a little bit to make him look a little bit more frustrated that gives the guy so much more character in his toys. I do wish they remember that that should be black around the yellow of his eye, but, smaller toy, smaller budget. I am still really impressed with how accurate this Shockwave is, especially with how the little hits of pink in the arms help break up the body. Alongside that, he's a really poseable little guy. He has one major piece of articulation that I think does hurt him because it's missing, but the rest of the body is great. So, just to go through it, you have a universal in the shoulder again, an upper arm cut, a good single joint elbow, a ball joint at the hip, an upper leg cut, and a deep single knee. And the feet are so big that they can get into most poses and stay there. There's just one thing I think this guy is missing. He has nothing in the head. You can see there's absolutely nothing there. It's a thing that Warrior Shockwave also had to deal with, and I don't like it. I think, and this is just my personal opinion, I think that head articulation is the most important piece of articulation any toy can have. Because you can deal with a figure that has limited articulation as long as you can get into a few good poses. When the head can't move, that means that the figure is always going to have to look straight forward. So even if it's the most poseable thing in the world, the fact that the head doesn't move is always going to be a problem for me personally. It takes this from being a good Shockwave. Head articulation could have made it a great Shockwave, in my personal opinion. Of course, this isn't just Shockwave. He came with a little partner guy. A big deal with the Spark Armor is that all the characters came with these little drones, and they could do things with them. So for Shockwave, he has one of the more interesting ones. He has this pink and purple satellite, and I love the idea of this, because in the show, Shockwave actually does shoot out a satellite the first time he shows up on Earth to try to track down Bumblebee and Windblade. And I think that this is in keeping with Shockwave's character. I kind of think it would be a cool idea to lean in on the idea that maybe Shockwave does just always have a satellite. And I could see it now, like he calls down, like missile strikes down from it. Maybe he's always having it to like track people down. It's really solid. And it helps that it's in his color scheme. Most of the characters got vehicles that didn't go with their color schemes and they kind of clashed. I'm thinking about Starscream and the Bulldozer. But here, it just looks like more Shockwave. And that makes the combination gimmick even better, because check this out, right? I'm going to take this satellite apart, piece by piece, just like that Lego Pharrell Williams movie, piece by piece, baby. And we are going to have, boop, this come out as a result. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to move the gun hose down on Shockwave. This goes here. We're going to be able to click in at the shoulders and at the chest. Oop. It's a little bit stiff on mine. I can't get it to quite go in. There we go. And then we're going to take this piece. It's now going to add on to his fusion cannon. We're going to take the gun of the satellite. It's now going to be a big gun on this side. And then we're going to take the panels of the satellite, just put it on the back side, and then that is an armored up Shockwave. As a goofy thing the toy can do, I really love this. It doesn't impair the articulation at all, and it gives you a very distinct looking robot mode, while still looking a lot like Shockwave. My favorite thing is that you now have this silver around his helmet, but you can still see his eye poking out. It's kind of similar to what the Siege Shockwave did, but whereas the Siege Shockwave, I thought the armor looked a little bit tacked on in some ways, this looks like something I could actually see Shockwave putting on. Like, yeah, of course he'd have a satellite that could also give him a little bit of a power boost. And this is how I prefer to keep this Shockwave on my shelf personally. It makes him a little bit more distinct from other Shockwaves, and at the end of the day, it's not a bad combination look. I love this as just like, this is Shockwave's Hulkbuster stuff. Like when he's having to go up against Megatron, this is the satellite he calls down. He cannot touch Alternator Shock Blast, Energon Shock Blast, or Prime Shockwave. However, I do think he's better than Shock Blart Mall Cop over here. I think that he can be, press secretary. He is press secretary of the Parliament of Shockwave. That's going to be your job, friend. Good thing you brought that satellite along, because you're going to be having to take a lot of questions from now on. Unless, of course, you can hold the other boy. Will this Shockwave be the chosen one who can actually hold Combiner Wars Shockwave? We did it, boys! We found one! We found one that can hold Combiner Wars Shockwave! Well, I'm not gonna lie, you're still not the leader of the Parliament, but congratulations, Senator! I guess you get to sit alongside Prime Shockwave and Energon Shock Blast after all. Even Alternator Shock Blast is nodding his head in approval in the back. You've done a good job, son. Congratulations on your new promotion. Now you too get to kick Shock Blart Mall Cop in the head. In fact, why don't we do that now? Here we go. He's already bowed down for you. Okay, ready? Put the boots to him! There we go! And so, at least one myth arc of Sunday Shockwave comes to an end, because we have finally found a Shockwave that can hold Combiner Wars Shockwave. Of course, we're going to continue to see if we can find more. However, he failed in the ultimate mission, and that is dethrone Alternator Shockwave as the greatest Shockwave of all time. To which I have to say, maybe, just maybe, I know of a candidate who could do it. Smooth Slide. Yeah.